So my guest today is Tabitha Jones. She's a triathlete in New South Wales here in Australia, and I think you'll get a lot out of today's episode if you're looking for some different ways to become a better swimmer and see how Tabitha's gone from around about a 20-25 second per 100 improvement over the course of about 8 or 9 months. Well, you've gone from, we were talking about just before, and you've gone from roughly a 2 minutes to 2:05 sort of pace for a sprint distance triathlon down to you did Port Mac half Ironman recently, which is 1.9k, and you're around the 140 mark per 100 for that. So that's like 20-25 seconds per 100 faster across a distance which is sort of doubling a bit for what you were used to, and that's in the space of, let's say, even if it was sort of 12 months from when you started the clinic, like that's a massive jump in the space of 12 months. So what I want to sort of cover a little bit is some of the changes you've made to your technique and training and those sorts of things in order to do that, because I'd say the majority of people who sort of come to us, a lot of them are around that 2 minutes plus range, and I think having you made that huge jump, it's a good insight into how someone's gone from that and to get well under the 2 minute pace. So, first of all, technique. So what do you focus on now when you're swimming as opposed to what you were focusing on beforehand?
I think the funny thing is, I've always been a big swimmer, so I've always swum lots of distance. So I think that the change for me has been focusing really on what I'm doing, instead of just swimming. I think I just used to go to the pool and swim, and whatever my set said, I'd do the distance or whatever. But I think since going to Hell Week, I actually really learned about why I was doing things, so why I was actually implementing drills, or why I was, whatever the case may be. So I was thinking about it, so it was quality swimming instead of just quantity. I think before, I don't think my quantity has changed so much. I don't think I'm swimming further, really, because I've always, been quite capable of doing long pull sets. But I think it's actually when I do a drill, I don't just do it because there's a drill there. I do it because I know there's a purpose for it. And making my swimming more purposeful. I really think that's it. I think that's the only real thing that's changed, as well as consistency. My consistency with my training has been heaps better. And I don't live where there's pools in winter, so I have to travel to swim, and just making the effort to not drop swim sets over winter and that sort of thing, whereas before I would. But before I'd sort of do seasonal, ramp it up in triathlon season and not so much, but I've seen that consistency is actually better for me.
And at Hell Week, I think it's about 13 sessions that we did in total last year, 13 swim sessions across the week, and by the end of it, everyone's fairly fatigued and sore, but to me, everyone looks a lot stronger in the water, and it's so much easier to make changes to your stroke when you're in that regularly. Most people, they might not even do 13 swim sessions a month compared to a week. And you talk about consistency. Well, the old rule of thumb is you take a week out of the water, it'll take you 2 weeks to get back to where you were. So just being in the water at least 3 times a week over the period of a couple of months, it just makes such a difference if you weren't doing that in the past. And you're working pretty closely with Ryan, who's one of our coaches, and he's sort of setting your triathlon programs, and I know this type of sets that he gives you, and they're just really, really good. They're specific, and there's a purpose behind them. And can you talk a little bit about the what you sort of get out of your training sessions now as opposed to beforehand, or how you view them now?
Yeah, so I think that's part of it too. So they're always different. There's always a lot of variety, but there is a purpose. So when, I have a training set and I read through it, there's always a real purpose to what I'm doing, and that helps me because like I like to be self-learning, and everything, a lot of what I do is remote, so I sort of don't do always face-to-face stuff. So if I can like be self-learning and instructing myself, that helps. But there is heaps of variety, and there is a purpose to everything that I'm doing, and I think that's good in terms of being able to make that set specifically about what it is you're trying to achieve at that time, rather than, like I said, just distance, like just getting in and doing laps and laps and laps, because I don't think that actually makes you a better swimmer.
No, there's got to be some purpose behind it. And I mean, even if you are doing, let's say it's like a slower session with like pull buoy paddles, and it's just to build like your base strength and base fitness, like that, without the right mindset or reasoning behind it, you just, like, I'd get to the pool and go, well, what's the point of just, getting through 4 or 5 Ks of just easy work with paddles, and like it's a very boring session until I can link it back to whatever I'm training for, and how it's actually going to help me. So that's I think that sort of, yeah, that reasoning behind it makes such a difference, and I know Ryan sort of is big on that as well. And one of the other things that I know you sort of changed after Hell Week. So we had a coach there, Andre Abradovic, I know you've been working with pretty closely, and he's been on the podcast before. And one of the things he mentioned was just about how you should go into a race for a triathlon. And I know you sort of took this on board, and it worked really well for you. So can you share that with the listeners about how you approach a race now?
Yeah, and that was actually one of the biggest things that I took away from Hell Week, because not so long after Hell Week, I actually raced in the Treks, the Cross Triathlon Worlds. And Andre talked a lot about going into races quite calm, not expending excess energy pre-race, being mindful, being in the moment, not rushing ahead in your mind and thinking out your race and that sort of thing. So at Treks, when we got there, they wetsuited us up and we had to sort of wait on the beach, and it was quite a long wait. Anyway, it was good because I had the opportunity to really use that time well, and I thought about what Andre told us, and I actually it was hot, everyone was hot, and people were quite restless and complaining, so I just sat down low, so I was in everybody's shadow, and I was quite cool, and I just visualised my start. I looked for the best place that I could start. I monitored my heart rate, made sure that my heart rate stayed low, and I just really tuned out to the sort of commotion, I suppose, that was sort of starting to happen pre-race, and everyone was nervous. Anyway, we weren't allowed to pre-swim, so we had to stay on the beach, and then we lined up, and I knew exactly where I wanted to stand on the line, and I went for my spot, like, at the front, confident, like I wasn't ever going to win that race or place in that race, but just with confidence, and I was ready, and I had the best start and a really strong swim. I think I was 8th or 9th out of the water, because I just went into it so prepared and so calm and so planned that I didn't waste any energy. And that's what I've found I've been able to take away from that is all of my races now where I've started, I've used that. I've stayed calm, I've stayed collected, and it's really, really helped me have not just a strong start, but a strong race, because I've stayed in that sort of calm frame. And I practice that a lot in my training. So a lot of my training, Ryan talks about easing into things and not, having that rush of adrenaline at the start, or that rush of, nerves. And it served me really well.